What is going on? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today I want to talk to you about Uranium Royalty Corp, tickers UROY. The whole uranium sector has been so undervalued for the longest time, but based on the overall demand and supply that is going on right now, it is very much anticipated that the market is going to go up. So I'm going to break it down why you should really add Uranium Royalty Corp to your watch list. So I'm going to go over all the stuff you need to know. Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And with that, let's get right to it. So I'm going to have a link to their website in the description below. Very much informative website, so definitely recommend to pop over there and take a look at it. But when it comes down to uranium, a lot of people have a very negative sentiment on it. But in fact, it is one of the cleanest and safe, most reliable forms of energy. And if you're one of those individuals that loves stats like myself and charts, you would love this. So as you can see right here, nuclear energy is actually one of the more stable energy sources and low emissions as well, carbon emissions, compared to anything else. So as you see, there's gas, solar PV, and wind. And so once again, this is very advantageous. And when it comes down to who is using it, as you can see based on this map, Europe is very much dependent on nuclear power plants, and a lot of actually countries do have them. So once again, I think that is very positive and one of those things that a lot of people might not necessarily know, because I think the overall sentiment when it comes down to uranium and nuclear power, a lot of people just always bring up what happened in Japan. So again, I think there's one negative thing that did occur that is basically just cursing the whole broader sector. But as of late, as you can tell based on this chart, things are starting to go up, as is spot prices, but still by no means where it actually should be. Because as I already mentioned though, as you can see right here, 2022 demand was expected to be at 189 million pounds versus the production expected 133 million pounds. Of course, there is that deviation. So like I said, based on supply and demand models, theoretically, the spot price should be significantly higher from where it was, or where it should be, I guess I should say. But again, when you are investing, for instance, in Uranium Royalty Corp, they are a very interesting company because they own the physical stock, so any price appreciation, they do benefit from that, but they also do have a very good portfolio. This is their portfolio right here, and on their website, like I said, which is very informative, it talks on the type of royalty, the mining method, project stage, and various things. But once again, they are collecting revenue and royalties on all of this. So once again, if you do take a step back and realize that even if the spot price doesn't necessarily go up as high as it is expected, well, guess what? They're still collecting a fairly good amount of royalty. Of course, it's very much advantageous for it to go up, but still, even if not, it is what it is at this stage. And so once again, this is very, very good because they do also have a global diversified asset portfolio. And that typically does help any company whatsoever when they have a diversified portfolio longer term. And as far as the states, I'm going to play this at the very end. So 𝗪𝗧𝗛𝗛𝗧 does talk and has a little bit more of an interview, and he does bring up basically about Biden and the administration and what they are basically doing for the uranium sector, or not doing. But he does talk on how there's a very big opportunity for companies such as Uranium Royalty Corp in the States. So again, this is very beneficial for Uranium Royalty Corp and technically any company that is really in the States right now. So let me know your thoughts on that. But when it comes to it though, they've always had a fairly big amount of key shareholders such as Sprott, Rick Rule, Uranium Energy Corp, which Uranium Energy Corp does actually have this 𝗪𝗧𝗛𝗛𝗧 as a connection. So he's also the CEO of Uranium Energy Corp, as it states right there. But going back over here though, as you can see, there's also Mega Uranium Limited, KCR Fund, Commodity Capital. So a lot of big players are in UROY, and as well, analysts love it because analysts love a very discounted stock. And Uranium Royalty Corp, like I've been kind of pointing out, is very much undervalued, and the underlying commodity is set to go up. So analysts absolutely love that. And the latest one was November the 29th, 2022, on which a $6 price target was given. And like I mentioned at the very beginning, or showed you, $2.58 is basically what it is sitting at. So very, very substantially at a discount to what it could be, at least based on analysts and what I feel. Keep in mind though, I'm not a financial advisor, so do your own due diligence at the end of the day. But analysts, oddly enough, have always really liked Uranium Royalty Corp because it's a very interesting beast. Because like I mentioned, technically, even if the commodity prices don't necessarily go up, they are still collecting a royalty. And over and above that, though, you can always invest in other operating companies, ETFs, physical funds, but Uranium Royalty Corp has everything. So they do have the direct exposure to uranium because they physically do own it as well. They also have fixed operating costs, no development or sustaining capital costs, exploration and expansion upside without the associated costs, diversified asset portfolio, and ability to grow without increased management. So once again, it hits all the marks for a very good investment, especially like I mentioned as well, spot price of uranium is set to go up. So again, when you are investing in this sector as well, you need to really look at the management team. Management team is on point, very much expertise in this whole sector, if that is even a word. But again, management is very much on point and one of the big driving factors on why you should really invest in this company. But like I mentioned at the very beginning, I'm going to play this this interview because it does talk on a lot of good points in here why Uranium Royalty Corp is a very good investment. So I'm just going to play this and mute myself. So I'm going to also go over some of the highlights at the very end as well.
Welcome back. U.S. energy companies are now firing back at President Biden's proposed windfall profits tax. One Wall Street Journal opinion piece calling this idea, quote, energy policy for dummies. Joining us right now is Uranium Energy Corp founder and CEO Amiir Adnani. Amiir, great to have you. Thanks very much for being here. What is your reaction to this windfall tax?
We have a power crisis and energy supply chain crisis globally, and supply chains start with the source of the energy or the minerals that we got to get out of the ground. And we want to cut that off. We want to tax that. We want to make it more complicated. It makes no sense. And when you think about this, we have a situation. It's like if you have a crisis, if you're flying on an airplane, right? And usually if there's turbulence, oxygen mask comes down and you're supposed to put that on first, right? This is like cutting the oxygen mask off and completely removing it, and then complaining about power prices being too high. We have soaring power crisis in Europe because in Europe, there's been zero investment made and support from a policy point of view in having energy in your own backyard, being dependent on Russia. So now we want to tax our own energy companies instead of supporting them, instead of giving them more ability to drill. And we're doing the exact opposite. I mean, I shake my head. I just can't understand this policy, especially at a time when we're dealing with crises.
Yeah, I want to get your take on sort of the bureaucracy that exists right now, because, you know, the president comes out and he's talking all about we want more production. But we know that when he first walked into office and over the last year and a half, he's been putting barriers in place, bureaucratic barriers in place in terms of limiting the number of leases approved and limiting the amount of production that can be done. But first, tell us how uranium fits in here.
We have the exact same issue in uranium as we do in hydrocarbons. The reality is we depend too much on Russia and former Soviet Union states. And if we don't look for these resources in our own backyard, we're not only going to face surging prices and energy bills that are going to go up, but we're also going to face a real national security threat, because that's what energy is. Energy is life, and we must be in control of our own destiny when it comes to energy. Here you have a situation where for the dependency on uranium, 60% of our uranium is coming from Russia and former Soviet Union states, and we don't mine any domestically. How does that make sense? Why are we not talking about supporting domestic capabilities? Just yesterday, the White House has a briefing with the United Arab Emirates to invest $100 billion abroad to help with energy transition. Fine, great to invest in energy, but why are we investing in energy in our own backyard? Why aren't we putting a fraction of that into making sure we have uranium domestically? That's the source of fuel for 1 in every 5 homes in America. This just does not make sense to me, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the event yesterday. The U.S. and the United Arab Emirates signed a strategic partnership to put that $100 billion into clean energy. So you're continuing to see this administration push forward the climate change agenda. Monica, jump in here.
Yeah, good morning, Amiir. So, President Trump got us to energy independence to the point where the United States was a net energy exporter for the first time in history. It was a remarkable remarkable achievement. And now just 2 years into Biden, and we are back on energy dependent on some of the world's worst regimes. But it seems pretty clear to me that all of us need to stop looking for logical reasons for what's going on. And it's very clear that energy is obviously the biggest lever available to the Biden administration, to the left, to effectuate this radical re-engineering of the U.S. economy. So yes, while the left talks about some top-line concern for climate and the environment, the real reason that they're really going after energy is because they want to leverage it into remaking the entire U.S. economy, energy being number one.
Look, at the end of the day, what President Trump did was to establish what we call today the National Uranium Reserve. This was the first time since the Eisenhower administration that the U.S. recognized the vulnerabilities that we have, the dependence that we have on foreign imports. That the reality is the Communist Party of China and Russia have outmaneuvered, outmuscled, and outsmarted the companies in the West when it comes to grabbing market share globally for nuclear energy. We got to get it back.
Yeah.
President Trump recognized that. Today, all we need to do in the U.S., all President Biden needs to do is support domestic capabilities to control our own supply chains. Energy starts with being able to dig material out of the ground, hydrocarbons, minerals, and we must not be afraid of digging. I'm sorry to say this, but what's wrong with digging? We keep investing in above ground infrastructure, but if we don't have the raw material to actually process, then we actually don't control the supply chains. President Biden should really, instead of focusing on investing capital abroad, do it domestically. Help us create tens of thousands of jobs domestically and become energy independent, especially when it comes to nuclear energy, which everyone agrees, including the Biden administration themselves, that we needed for emission-free electricity is nuclear power. Then why are we depending so much on Russian and overseas imports and not building our domestic capabilities? This should really be addressed right away.
Look where it's gotten Europe and Germany.
So Amir does bring up a lot of good points, and I think it goes back down to a little bit more of a diversified portfolio that Uranium Royalty Corp does in fact have. So they don't necessarily depend on everything in the States, even though there might be some issues going on behind the scenes. But historically, and like I mentioned at the very beginning, investing in a very clean, safe, and reliable form of energy is very, very beneficial going forward. But let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. If you do like my channel and support the growth, take a look at my memberships, link in the description below, or just hit the join button at the bottom of the screen. And with that said, I appreciate all you guys watching.